Welcome. Today I'm going to cover some really basic stuff that is so basic that couples a lot of times overlook this. And if you're not in a relationship yet, knowing this will be a really, really good thing to know to make sure that you avoid the problems that the majority of couples end up having. And what that is there are two fundamental areas that couples need to focus on to have good relationships. This is based on our experience over the last 12 years working with a lot of people. And I wanted to just give a brief explanation of that, or two big categories. Now, each category has a lot of little pieces in it, but I found it's better to introduce them in chunks first. The first category is, are you on the same page with your partner? And by the way, I am bouncing around like crazy here. Do you have the same long-term goals that your partner has? Because oftentimes you'll hear the two challenges couples have are sex and money. Well, money falls into long-term goals. Sometimes people want to have a startup business and it's really financially stressful for many years, or it's never successful, or it's tremendously successful. But if there are other partners just wanting them to stay at home and have a stable, secure job, that's an issue. That's money, which is one of the long-term vision things. The sex side is the next category, how you treat each other. And that can be broken down into several areas that include communication and fundamental understandings, as well as your physical techniques that you follow. The long-term goal stuff, we have some worksheets that if you're already in a relationship, it's a great idea to write this out separately, because there's also a way you can at least understand each other and compromise if you do have major differences in these areas. A lot of times that happens a lot. Actually, we've seen that a lot. As far as the second category of how you treat each other, there are a few things that we have couples go through. First is just communication. It's amazing that over 90%, more than 90% of couples that we've encountered never share to each other what they truly want sexually, what their deep fantasies are. And that's a shame. And they don't share it because they're either embarrassed or think their partner might be offended or judged or hurt, or, they're just shy, whatever the case. This is true with men and women, males and females. A key thing also that really screws stuff up, that doesn't have to, is there are many different actual meanings for the word love in the English language. Love is love, sex, and several other things are defined by context, feeling also. For instance, love can be romantic love, it can be love for a friend, it can be love for a child, it can be love for your partner where you're taking care of them. It can be a camaraderie love where you want your partner to do better. And it can be many things. It can be a spiritual love. And all of these things are, you figure out what the emotion is by the context and the way you say it. And the problem is, many times couples have very different ideas of what love is, and just assume the other partner is on the same page with them about that. That causes problems. Many times, and I'll cover the second common area here, and then give some examples. Many times, we will be teaching at resorts. They may be more romantic locations, or they may be the kind of wild places that everybody wonders about, but nobody actually goes except the few that dare to. We've seen all sorts of things around here. And my phone again is slipping, so we're having issues. There. I hope. Alright, getting back to what I was meaning. Many times we'll see couples come to a resort and tell us they want, or the guy says he wants to re-spark the feelings they had when they first met, the passion, the romance, whereas the woman just wants to feel connection to her partner again, and that he's paying attention to her, and she wants to feel the passion again too. But her idea of what that is different from what the guy's idea is. And since they're not on the same page about that, it's much harder to create an experience that they can share those feelings together with and enhance those feelings. Sex is another big one. What is sex? Is it a noun, the sex of something, male or female? Is it a verb, the act of reproductive acts? Is it an act of pleasure? Is it male, female, heteronormative intercourse? Is it anal sex? Is it oral sex? Is it hand massage? You know, that also is defined by context, and everybody's quiet about it. Well, when couples don't know what the other person means for sex, that gets things even more confusing. And the good news is, for this, we also have worksheets and a program you can go through where you figure it out yourself and your partner figures it out, and then you share this stuff together, and they're doled out in little chunks, 5-minute sessions like this, 5-10-minute sessions that you can listen to while you're driving. And I record them while I'm driving, so we'll be on the same page about that. Just make sure you pay attention to your driving. But once you figure that out, you ultimately understand, or at least our opinion is, that the physical act of sex is actually a subset of massage. It's a subset of touch. Now, sex is more than that. Sex is the act of creation, or it can be. It's also an act of pleasure and a mental state that can be a mental creation too. That's another topic we cover, where couples have a shared vision, and through this altered state they can achieve in sex, they unify their vision, and it becomes very powerful. A lot of tantric practices and Taoist practices call that sexual magic. We just explain it from a Western, understandable kind of neuroscience geek perspective. But so, I've said, okay, there are lots of different meanings for sex. Another big thing is the motivation for sex. Where are you coming from for that? Because sex has many different motivations. One motivation is the need. It is a drive that compels us to go through the motions of trying to reproduce, or at least to stimulate ourselves in a way that would mimic that, if not do that. And that is so fundamental to us. It's kept us around on the planet. All living things share that. This is kind of stereotypical, but many times guys come from the standpoint of need. They just need that release. When you go beyond that motivation, though, if you don't have as strong of a need, people then focus on the pleasure. And the analogy that my mentor, Dr. McLavina, would give is that it's kind of like you haven't eaten in 3 days, and you find that there's a free buffet. Well, you will just eat everything and anything that you can to relieve that need you have to eat. And that's what you do. But let's say that you've had a good breakfast already and a good lunch, and you're meeting with some friends that you enjoy the conversation, and you're going to meet that night and have a nice meal. Everybody's bringing something, and you want to enjoy the process and have a little bit of all the different things that everybody's brought to experience it for the enjoyment of the taste and the experience of it, not just satisfying the hunger. That viewpoint, many times we've at least seen stereotypically in women, is where women are coming from. Now, it's a whole scope of things, so I don't want to generalize here for any particular type, but that's been our general observation. So if the man's coming from, I've got to have this release standpoint, and the woman's coming from, I want this experience, plus we also have roles we're taught when we're young. And if we have a role or a ritual that to be sexual and proper for a woman, the man has to do step 1, step 2, step 3, bring her flowers, do this, go out to dinner, go for a walk on the beach. If those things aren't checked off subconsciously, the woman sometimes doesn't allow, or the guy doesn't allow themselves to be in the mood for sex. Now, women and men are kind of different, that men usually have a constant sex drive as long as they're healthy. Whereas women, at least based on what Kinsey and others have said, and this isn't true for every woman, but their general observation was that women had as high of a sex drive as men, but it was cyclic. It would increase around ovulation at certain times of the month, and it also could dissipate very quickly. Women could be incredibly in the mood and hear something that disturbed them, or have a body image issue, or have a thought that just knocked them out of the mood. Whereas guys are more like a freight train. Once they get going, they don't stop. So that is a big difference. But if guys are approaching their partner, and it just worked when they first got together, they didn't really know what they were doing, everything just clicked, and it was great. But that becomes a problem when the woman's drive reduces a little bit, and suddenly the guy just putting the moves on her doesn't work, because he's coming from the standpoint of, this is a need I need to release, whereas the woman's coming from the standpoint of, I kind of would like that pleasure if I was in the mood, but I'm not in the mood right now, and I've got stuff I'm worried about, so I need to do that. And they just don't understand the mismatch of communication there. So those are the first two drives: needs, and then the desire for pleasure or experience. Beyond that, the state of arousal and the state of orgasm can induce almost spiritual feeling, and that can be the active creation of a new life if you are trying to conceive a child. But that also is a altered mental state that is practiced in Taoism, that is practiced, or certain types of Taoism, various tantric practices, and expanded on tremendously. It's also highly oppressed in certain religions, because I frankly think they realize it'll help people have spiritual experiences, and they want to control that. That's more a political thing than a spiritual development thing, from my opinion personally. But although it does keep society in an orderly way, so you know who your kids are and all that stuff, so I get that historically. But it does have its ramifications. Beyond that, there's another motivation for sex that's kind of sitting behind everything, and we need to talk about that and be aware of it, and that is the commerce or the exchange model. That if you have this desire, this need to be fulfilled, you have to do 1, 2, and 3 for me first before I will give you release, with me at least. And that is so pervasive in our culture. It's crazy. I was listening to some lyrics of some pop songs from the past, and one was, if you want to be with me, there's a price to pay. You've got to work and do blah, 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 etc., etc. That's embedded in our brains, and we don't even realize it. So that's another big issue, because what we like couples to get to is a combined understanding of what their sexual and relaxation and physical needs are, and honoring each other for that, and an understanding of what love means, and to get to the point where they achieve a feeling of love together that I believe it's in Sanskrit, and I'm going to brutalize the pronunciation, but it's called mudita, which Sanskrit has, if I understand correctly, 93 different specific words for the emotions of love. Greek has 5 big ones, and 7 depending on who you talk to. So they have separate words for these feelings. But mudita is just general desire for the well-being of your partner, so that they're doing well, and you want them to be happy, and that's very different from the what will you do for me. When someone thinks this person completes me, well, that's also an exchange model. They're doing something for them. So there are many things to ponder here about that. But I wanted to just go over some of the most fundamental misunderstandings that couples often have, and give you good news that you can actually resolve a lot of this by just getting on the same page about it. And we have programs to help explain that in a lot more detail. But that's the general idea for today. Again, to summarize, number one, we've observed out of a lot of couples, several thousand over the last 12 years, that there are 2 major categories that happy couples have. Number one, they're on the same page about what they want in life, and that's they have the same vision. And if they are on the same page, they can tolerate how life goes, because life can be unpredictable. And if you're wanting a stable job and security versus going and traveling the world and living it by the seat of your pants, two very, very different experiences. So number one, being on the same page, also for children, all that stuff. Number two is how they treat each other. And what I talked about for treating right now was just communication, how they define love, how they define sex, um, understanding each other's needs. There also are the physical techniques for treating each other and certain acts of caring. We can go into that later. But those are the two categories. So what I would challenge you to do today is think about, what are my ideas of love? And ask your partner if you want, or if you don't feel ready for that, don't ask them yet. And just get to know yourself, because you really need to know yourself to be with someone and truly enjoy their presence and give them who you are. So that's it for today. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will talk to you here soon.